Hey horror fans, welcome back to Room 237. I do still have one Herschel Gordon Lewis film to do, but this is kind of a random movie that I keep with my Herschel Gordon Lewis films because it's very similar to Wizard of Gore, and some consider it a loose remake, from 1976, the Troma film, Bloodsucking Freaks. This is the only Troma film I have. I don't have Tromeo and Juliet, Rabbit Grannies, even any of the Toxic Avenger films. Graduation Day was distributed by Troma, but it wasn't made by Troma. So this is the only one I have. And real quick, for those who don't know what Troma is, it's basically a production company founded by Lloyd Kaufman that just makes pure exploitation schlock for the sake of making exploitation schlock. Basically it. And this is, I would say, next to Toxic Avenger, this is one of their biggest films. Definitely one of their most notorious. It's considered one of the most controversial movies ever made. And it is very similar to The Wizard of Gore. This is the director's cut. Because it does involve a showman on a stage killing, more so torturing and killing women on stage in front of an audience who they think it's an act. But, you know, without the silliness of a wizard and it not being real and then happening later, it's all happening on stage. Now, the title is kind of weird, Bloodsucking Freaks. It had a number of other titles, such as The Incredible Torture Show, which I wouldn't have minded, and Sardu, Master of the Screaming Virgins, which sounds like a Troma film. And also just this cover, like none of these people are in the movie. That kind of looks like Ralphus at the end, but none of these people are in it. And it's not really about vampires or anything. I first heard of this movie because when I was in high school, I don't like rap music at all, but unless it's like horrorcore, other than like ICP and Twisted. But a rapper I really liked in high school was Necro. And on the back of his Gory Days album, he was wearing a shirt of Bloodsucking Freaks. And I knew he was a big horror fan, so I had to check this out. I ordered this from the store that I've been frequenting for 10 years. And I actually skipped school to go pick this up, and Cannibal Holocaust. So I bought those the same day. And Bloodsucking Freaks, it's a movie that my appreciation, I've always appreciated this film, but every time I see it, I understand more and more how much of a bad movie it is. I mean, it has a 26% of Rotten Tomatoes. I would give it that. And just some of the reviews from people, I mean, like, people from, like, ClassicHorror.com and TV Guide saying it's, like, the worst movie ever made. One guy from eFilmCritic.com said there's the bottom of the barrel, this is the underside of the barrel, and the nastiest, filthiest, just about worst thing you'll ever see. But other people, you know, have gone on to cite, you know, the effects are fun. It's just nudity and torture. That's all this movie was meant to be, and that's exactly what it delivers on. In the spirit of Herschel Gordon Lewis. But, you know, it was also subject of a campaign of Women Against Pornography. Even though this is not a pornographic film, Joel Reed, the director, was a pornographic director, although he went by a pseudonym. And I mean, this is just one of those exploitation films you can't really get mad at. I mean, if you're a horror fan or an exploitation fan, there's no point in getting mad at a movie like this, especially for things like acting, plot, set design, anything like that. Okay, in New York, you have this guy Sardu, played by Seamus O'Brien, who I will say, Seamus O'Brien, and who plays Sardu, and Alan Dele, who plays Creasy Silo, the stage critic. Those are really the only two actors that I would say gives a competent performance. I mean, Seamus O'Brien, he's pretty convincing, and he's very devoted. Louis de Jesus, who plays the demented dwarf assistant Ralphus, he's very committed, but he's a terrible actor. Everyone in this movie, other than those two, are terrible actors. But you don't go into a movie like this expecting, like Francis Ford Coppola or Scorsese acting. Sardu runs this show, and I mean, it's one of those movies that you really just want to take a shower after. Not like Taxi Driver, where it's really grimy, just the set design's pretty disgusting. It's like this dingy, dungeony looking stage with no production. And then underneath is like where Sardu lives, and then there's like almost looks like the catacombs of Paris where he keeps the Bloodsucking Freaks. And he has all these women that he gets through human trafficking, which nowadays, with how rampant that shit is, you couldn't make a movie like this. And he has his demented dwarf Ralphus assistant. Sardu delivers monologues about the mad, the macabre, the dark, the sadism and stuff, and then Ralphus gleefully tortures the women on stage. They all think it's an act. One critic, Creasy Silo, played by Alan DeLay, kind of berates him in front of everyone and personally. So he has him kidnapped and held captive. He says, I'm going to do this great big show, and you're going to be the critic. And there's a celebrity ballet dancer named Natasha Di Natale, played by Vehu Krem. I'm guessing is how you pronounce that. He kidnaps her. He wants her to dance, and he shows her various ways he will torture her if she doesn't agree to dance for him. And pretty much what this movie is made for and what it's built around is that all the women in it are 100% nude. You have some women, he's the master of everyone. They all call him master, but there are some that wear like S&M type clothes that help kidnap women or whip them around. Then they have the ones that are human trafficking and in the shows. And then way down underneath in this cage are ones who can't be trained, and they're pretty much resorted to zombies, kind of just rabid, feral women. So you get the torture on stage, the torture that he shows the ballerina that she's going to get if she doesn't agree, and then just the recreational torture. And I mean, there's a list of stuff on here. Or maybe it's on the original cover. But if you go on Wikipedia, there's actual, okay, the first thing we see is, on stage, it's thumb screws. Just a woman in a chair, and there's like a vice on her thumb. So of course, Ralphus, played by Louis De Jesus, he is always just, he's always super intense. He's always like bouncing around. I guess he played an Ewok. He's always overacting. And then, there's the iron tourniquet, which is like this skull vice. And this is what I mean by effects being bad, 'cause you can see it like loose on her head as he cranks it. She just sits there and screams. But then you get amputation, and the amputation of the wrist looks really good with a bone saw. But then that's like stuff on the stage. But then, just for fun, like Sardu, sort of like Clockwork Orange, he just has like naked women on all fours. There's like a dinner table and like candle wax drips on them. Or him and Ralphus will play darts. So there's like a woman laid over a thing with a scoreboard painted on her ass, and they just throw darts at her. There's this one game. I've seen this game in other movies. It's like a board with a bunch of triangles. You have white chips, brown chips, and you just keep rolling dice. And they play for fingers. They each have a woman by their side, and they just like meat cleaver fingers off that they play with. And then you just get other stuff like, showing the ballerina. Well, first they show the critic. They take these electro clamps to a woman's nipples and keep cranking it till she calls him master. Which, if you look, when it shows Sardu in the shot, one of her breasts does not have a clamp on the nipple. Don't know why. Wikipedia doesn't even list them all chronologically. There's a part where the ballerina like gets sick or whatever, so this is a big scene. And actually, I was living in an apartment with a friend of mine after I graduated, and I was watching this when another friend came over. And he came over during this scene, and he almost threw up. Because he likes horror movies like Rest Stop and, Vacancy, stuff like that. Not quite stuff like this. So they call a doctor, and instead of payment, they do trade, where he's allowed to do whatever he wants to one of the women. So he pulls out all her teeth, and I mean, that looks good. Then he drills into her head and puts a straw in, sucks some brains out. Which he's singing some like, I don't know what kind of, it's like a fast Italian, either Italian or something kind of song. You can tell it's voiced over, and he's just moving his mouth. So yeah, sticks a straw in, just sucks the brains out. But then he gets fed to the feral ones. It sounds like, now, see, the plot's very simple. Just literally just a guy running a torture show. People think it's real. He wants a ballerina to join him, but he has to convince her to do so. Then a subplot of her boyfriend and a PI trying to find out what happened to her and the critic. And the rest is just torture. And sometimes the effects are awesome. Like, there's another scene when it's implied that she's very young. Another scene that they do in front of the ballerina to get her to dance. They put her in a guillotine, but they put the rope that holds it in her mouth, and then they cane her. So when she can't take it, she screams, and then the blade comes down. The decapitation looked awesome. You get some gross out parts, like the woman that got shocked Ralphus is then wearing like a cowboy hat and he's like pretending to ride her like a horse. And Sardu like takes the horse thing out of her mouth and says like, "Your mouth will make an interesting urinal." So you get gross out shit like that. There's also a few scenes about like human trafficking. Like one of his, I guess, one of his customers, the guy that buys and collects, he's actually played by Alfonso de Noble, he was the pedophile neighbor on Alice, Sweet Alice, who passed away 2 years later. He, if I remember correctly, yeah, he shot himself. Sadly, he got stuck in a turnstile. He had problems with weight. He got stuck in a public turnstile, and it caused him such embarrassment in the newspapers that he shot himself. And actually, Seamus O'Brien, who plays Sardu, he was stabbed to death in an apartment robbery. Veju Krem, who plays the ballerina, she was shot in a hunting accident. Alfonso de Noble shot himself. Louis de Jesus, who plays Ralphus, he died in the 80s. A lot of people in this movie died. Another, like, one thing that was really stupid, it was what's it called? God damn it. St. Andrew's Cross, which is like this form of torture where you're on like this X, and then there's like these cranks that it was supposed to like go up or down and like stretch the body out, which we get, but it doesn't do anything. Just kind of goes like this, and the actress screams. Very cheap effect. But when there's bloody or gory effects, it does work. It does look good. I mean, this is a gritty, sleazy ass movie. And what's common in movies like this is that the bad guy gets his comeuppance. And of course, the feral girls get out. And it ends with, the girls like blowing his whistle. And, we see the severed heads of Ralphus and Sardu. But it literally ends on a sandwich with his dick in it. A cock meat sandwich. And it ends with one of the girls going to take a bite out of it. But it doesn't freeze frame. She just pauses. So that's what kind of movie this is. I mean, and there's other obnoxious scenes, like when they're trying to brainwash the ballerina. There's this obnoxious music and Ralphus with the fucking cymbals. And like he cooks eyeballs. There is one funny scene when it shows the shipping department of human trafficking. Ralphus is like doing inventory. One girl breaks out of a box and he just runs over, hits her in the head, she falls back in, and then he closes it. But it's all like one fluent motion. I can't necessarily say I recommend Bloodsucking Freaks to anybody. You really have to be into like torture films. You have to be comfortable with it. But it's not... Don't be disappointed that it's not like a Saw film, because it is far from that. It almost feels like it's played for humor, just because of how poor the acting is. Just the whole thing around it, like the fact that it was literally made just for that. It's not a Saw film. It's not meant to be scary like a Saw film. most of the score is really cartoony and ridiculous, except for the main score, which is like the bong, 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 dun, 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 dun. Which actually, there's a band from, I think, Finland, a brutal porno grind band, actually, if you can believe that's a thing, called Torso Fuck. And they like to use samples in their songs. And there's one song, I have the album, but I can't remember which song it is. The sample in the beginning of the song is the audio to the entire trailer of this. It's like a 2-minute sample. God damn. So yeah, I mean, it's a really pointless, bad, cheesy movie. But it's literally only made for torture, and, you know, it's just that kind of movie. Like, imagine a slasher film, but it's non-stop deaths. That's like prolonged torture, different forms of torture. A lot of it is played up for laughs. That's what kind of movie this is. Definitely sleazy. Definitely deserves this 26%. But if you can find the humorous side in it, then it will be more enjoyable. I would recommend getting this director's cut. You get a commentary by Eli Roth, and it's kind of funny because he goes really in depth with some of the stuff in this in the commentary that you would think this kind of movie doesn't deserve. That kind of extra thought. This has always been a guilty pleasure for me. I mean, it is a shitty movie. It is a shitty, sleazy movie, but I've always liked it. In fact, there's even a part where Sardu is explaining to the critic how he can turn his torture show into a ballet and get people to like it. You know, saying how, well, if we just go out there and do what we do, it's just going to look like murder and I'll be imprisoned. But with, you know, some kind of story, a minimal plot, and a score, it will be seen as art. And I'm just like, he just described this fucking movie. Very, very tiny plot, somewhat of a score that's all over the place. Kind of a story. And it's just non-stop nudity and torture throughout. Almost every scene, there's some kind of torture. All the acting is bad. Again, Sardu probably gives the best performance. The one critic that's held captive, he does alright, but everyone else is, like, laughably bad, like, terrible. But I just can't express enough that this is not meant to be taken seriously. If you like movies with torture and cheesy effects or Troma films, definitely check it out. But, you know, if you think you're going to get a Saw film or a Hostel film, I would definitely look into it more. But anyway, 1976, Bloodsucking Freaks. Thank you for watching.